Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Great to see you today.
Thank you for having me, Harris.
Let's start with what the president means when he says that he could actually run the Russia investigation.
Well, the president and his team have been incredibly compliant and cooperative with the Mueller investigation. You have over 1 million documents produced. 33-some witnesses have gone and visited the Mueller investigation and testified under oath thusly. And so this is a president who also thinks that it completely ridicules the system of justice if we're not looking at the other side of this investigation. You had corrupt dealings all the way up the chain in the FBI. Many of them have lost their jobs now in security clearances. Andrew McCabe, obviously Peter Strzok, Lisa Page is gone, she left, Jim Comey, and the shenanigans he pulled in front of Congress and in his silly book. And the fact is that Peter Orr is still there. And we know that his wife, Nellie Orr, was paid by Fusion GPS, the research firm that started the ridiculous dossier. May I remind your audience, it's just a fancy French word for a load of crap, along with Christopher Steele.
Wow.
And yeah, because it is. And the president, there's a level of frustration and consternation that we're not looking at all sides of this equation. So the president also, look, the special counsel's under his purview, but he's been very cooperative, as have the other people who have been asked to speak with Mr. Mueller.
All right. You mentioned Bruce Orr and his wife, Nellie. He's on the list that the president has said he might strip away security clearances. Some criticism that it looks more political and retaliatory than something that protects the nation. I want to give you a chance to respond, and then we'll move on.
So not everyone who's had a security clearance keeps them when they leave office, when they leave public service, I should say. Some do. But there are two primary reasons why somebody would is, number one, if you want to have a continuum, if that person wants to be helpful to the next administration. And Mr. Brennan has proven that he does not wish to be helpful to this administration. In fact, he's a virulent critic of this administration, this president's policies on cable TV, where he's now paid for his opinions. That is his right. But this is somebody whose claims were completely rebutted by an inspector general's report in 2014. This is someone who had a difficult time being truthful when brought before a congressional committee. And Chairman Burr put it best last week. Why, if Mr. Brennan, the former CIA director but current pundit on a cable news station, a lower rated one than yours, why would Mr. Brennan not have told the Senate Intelligence Committee what he thought with respect to Russia collusion and other matters? Why didn't he make it part of either his testimony, the information that he provided? Why does he wait to say that? So this isn't about silencing critics. This is about the fact that security clearances are privileges, they are not rights. And it's a professional courtesy to keep it extended to somebody who's no longer in public service and or somebody who wishes to be helpful to the success of administration. He's proven that he doesn't want to be helpful.
Well, it's certainly not about silencing, because we have heard more from John Brennan recently.
That's right. He's probably given him a larger platform. And by the way, Mr. Clapper
and the president
had some pretty tough words for Mr. Brennan, as have some others.
All right. The president also today is pushing back on a report, Kellyanne, that his advisors urged him to block President Obama's access to intelligence briefings until H.R. McMaster had to step in. The president tweeted this: "Fake news, of which there is so much. This time, the very tired New Yorker falsely reported that I was going to take the extraordinary step of denying intel briefings to President Obama. Never discussed or thought of." I want to get the White House response to that as well.
It's nothing that I've ever discussed with the president. He's never raised it with me, and so I'm not aware of that at all. And I'll take the president at his word, because he is actually he's explaining it to the whole world. He has been very, very helpful, I think, and very respectful of former President Obama's access to intelligence information as that may be necessary. I mean, I remember standing in many places during the transition and commending what we thought to be then the desire for a smooth transition between the outgoing administration and the incoming administration. I was invited to the White House by Valerie Jarrett, a very close aide who served all 8 years to President Obama. President Obama himself had instructed many people in his administration to be helpful to us in coming in. So the president has returned the courtesy many times. As for others, what they were doing in perhaps what they were doing in the upper echelons of the FBI and the DOJ at the time, we should all like to know, especially those who are calling for accountability and transparency and pretending that other things happen which they can't seem to prove or find.
Wow. I want to talk with you about opioid addiction now, because this was something that was popping on the horizon yesterday. We heard that the life expectancy inside the United States has fallen, and partly due to the drug addiction that we have going on in our nation. The president urged the Republican-led Senate to pass legislation aimed at attacking the crisis. He tweeted this: "It is outrageous that poisonous synthetic heroin, fentanyl, comes pouring into the U.S. postal system from China. We can and must end this now. The Senate should pass the STOP Act and firmly stop the poison from killing our children and destroying our country. No more delay." I have talked with Congress members, including Chairman Walden, who has led a charge on getting legislation on the House side as well. Can you give me kind of a progress report? Because you and the president were tweeting about this yesterday.
That's right, Harris. And this will be absolutely by far the most important part of our interview, but it will be the one that gets the least amount of coverage because it's a complicated topic that many don't want to dig into and understand. It actually affects many lives. Drug overdoses in this country hit 72,000 last year. That's a 10% increase over the year before. And the year before that, it was a 22% increase. So it still is going up, but it's being slowed down in large part because the president's three-point plan to help combat the opioid crisis and drug supply, drug demand epidemic roiling our country it includes a 30% reduction in prescribing over the 3 years, and we're already seeing less prescribing. On the matter of fentanyl, Fentanyl, fentanyl. Please, I beg everybody who's got a platform to start informing America about this. It claimed 29,000 plus American lives last year. We have more people dying from drug overdoses than breast cancer or gun violence or plane crashes, certainly things that get a ton of attention, and rightly so. But fentanyl is a synthetic opioid being brought to our country through China and increasingly from Mexico, So the president, in asking the Senate to pass the STOP Act and put it on his desk for signature, that would have enhanced and advanced electronic data on packages that come from China, for example, through the U.S. Postal Service. Private carriers are already compelled to list the sender, the recipient, and the contents of the package. USPS should do the same because we are getting fentanyl through our own mails and into our communities. Harris, almost 30,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses last year. Most of the country has no idea what fentanyl is, let alone it's being laced into heroin, meth, marijuana, cocaine. In Cincinnati recently, there was a report that 36 people went to the emergency room because of that. The Border Patrol stopped a 19-year-old. It's not even legal to drink in this country. 19-year-old had so much heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl on him, seized at the border. Recently, Maryland state troopers stopped a tractor-trailer, had so much fentanyl could have wiped out all of D.C. Americans need to know
Kellyanne,
this.
I'm going to jump in because I want to bring you back and also talk a little bit about moving forward. You've seen Senators Rob Portman and others make a difference in his home state of Ohio.
He's been a huge leader on the STOP Act.
And you have seen some progress with this. But that number of 72,000 dead is staggering compared to where we were even a decade ago. I appreciate your time on this.
And
it's a very important
legislation.
issue.
Passed the House over 350, I think 353 to 52.
Yes.
And so put it on the president's desk, and he will sign it into law.
It's a bipartisan, as you said.
It's hugely bipartisan, nonpartisan issue, but it's starving for bipartisan solutions. This past January, the president signed into law the Interdict Act, also bipartisan. It passed the House 412 to 3, and it passed the Senate by unanimous consent. He signed it with Democrats around him in the Oval Office.
Kellyanne Conway, again, I want to bring you back to talk more about this because there is
Harris.
more after the holiday that I know legislatively will be happening with this. Hit you on a lot of counts today. Appreciate your time.
You got it. Take care.